All right, we are back at it. We got Wednesday, October the 28th. If you missed the lesson today, you can catch up your notes and get kind of an idea of what we talked about today. What you need to do in the Google Classroom, make sure you're doing the warm ups. Very important you do the warm up. And then you have this thing called Wordy Wednesday that's going to open up into a file. And so what you need to do is open up that file, and it's going to have the definition of economic, and then you write it in a sentence, and definition of acquire, and then you write it in a sentence. If you need the definitions, they are right here. So put the definition of economic having to do with money there, and then write a sentence with economic in it. And then to acquire means to buy something or get something, and then you would put something like, I would like to acquire blank for Christmas. Something simple like that. Make sure you submit both the warm up and your Wordy Wednesday, and you should be good to go as far as that goes. So warm up and Wordy Wednesday, make sure you get both of those turned in. Now let's get on with the lesson today. We're talking about the Battle of Saratoga. We're going to be talking about the winter at Valley Forge, and we're also going to be talking about some very important people that the STAAR test likes to mention. The Battle of Saratoga is going to be the turning point of the Revolutionary War. And the reason why it's a turning point, now what a turning point is when one side starts to win almost all the rest of the battle. Up until that point, it's been America, then Britain, then America, then England, America, then England. But then the Battle of Saratoga happened, and the biggest army on the continent was defeated by the Americans. And then Europe was watching this, and they decided to join the bandwagon. And so the bandwagon was, hey, the Americans won. They're starting to win. Let's go. Let's join them, because if we do, they're going to want to trade with us. They're going to want, a nice relationship with us. So let's join them. And the biggest two countries that joined was France and Spain. So why is Saratoga the turning point? Saratoga is the turning point because European nations like France, mostly France, and Spain joined in on the war efforts. And then here's a little picture of a general giving his sword to Washington. During that time, you remember yesterday we were talking about, the soldiers, they needed food, they needed ammo, they needed blankets, they needed all this stuff. And France came in and they started to send money, they started to send weapons, they started to send even troops. Spain also helped us out with that stuff. And so no longer was, the war seeming so bleak or sad or hopeless. After the Battle of Saratoga, we are now ready to actually finish this war, and it's going to take 6 years or so, but we are ready to do it. Some important people. Speaking of France, Benjamin Franklin, very important. He helped convince France to join the war efforts. You need to know that. Then you had this guy. His name was James Armistead. He posed as an escaped slave, so he could go back and forth between England and between the colonies, and he was a spy. And he acted as a guide for them. You need to know James Armistead. And then the Navy guy, John Paul Jones. He's the Navy guy, and he was really big with Navy victories and things like that. So make sure you know and remember him as well. Then you had this thing called the winter at Valley Forge. Now remember, the soldiers were in a bad state. They were not getting all the supplies that they needed. They didn't have clothing. They didn't have shoes. They didn't have gloves. They didn't have hats. They didn't have coats. Not all of them, but a good number of them did. And so they decided to camp in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And what they did there was they just camped and they trained some. And the problem, though, is in Pennsylvania, winters are very cold. And so a lot of them, had frostbite, had to have amputations. A lot of them starved. A lot of them got sick and died of disease. And so the Winter Valley Forge, a lot of the soldiers grew weak because they did not have enough warm food or warm clothing. About 2,500 people died. Soldiers died at Valley Forge. And that was not a battle. That was actually where these guys were camping over the winter. But the good thing is, when Valley Forge was over with, the men who stayed, they trained, they became better, they became more of that, as we said yesterday, regular army, and they came out of it. The ones who survived it came out of it much stronger, much more willing and ready to fight, and that was a big deal. So if you wanted to get the notes start here, the Battle of Saratoga. So I'll pause there. You can pause it and get your notes, and then make sure that you are getting both the left side and the right side. So you got Valley Forge and Franklin here. Franklin's here. Valley Forge, boom and boom. Get that, and then James Armistead's here. Make sure to get him, and then finally you can get the Navy guy John Paul Jones here in this column here. You can pause that. And we hope to see you guys tomorrow. You guys are awesome. We'll see you soon.